Welcome back to my channel. I'm Shirley with Holistic Transformations Massage, also known as Jolly with Jolly's Healing Touch. Here today with my dear friend, Dr. Charlene Désir. I am so excited to talk to you today, sis, about, the importance of self-care. But before we get into that, Dr. Désir is a research professor at Nova Southeastern University. She's a Harvard graduate and a Vodou priestess, Manbo Vodou priestess, and my dear friend. I am so honored to have her here. She does work, she's a psychologist and does amazing work with children and especially girls on development and sharing their story. And I'm so excited for you to come here and tell us more about what you do and tell us a little bit more about how self-care is a revolutionary act. So welcome, Dr. Désir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Dr. Désir, please tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Well, I'm a research professor and I'm a trained school psychologist. And a lot of my work is looking at the social, psychological, and spiritual wellness of young people. Particularly, of course, I'm Haitian descent. I target and work with Haitian young people in South Florida and in Haiti. I really do relevant cultural camps and how do we know what we know, like really having independent thinking and critical consciousness around how we exist and how we thrive. So that's the majority of my work. I'm very much committed to the wellness of all people, but particularly the wellness of, the Pan-African community in the Americas. So, one of the things I'm very much committed to is how do we form a consensus? How do we form community around issues of joint, individual, and communal wellness?
So Dr. Désir, I'm really excited about your summer program in Haiti. I know with everything going on, it was postponed, and I would like to hear more about it. So if you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, I mean, for the last 20 plus years, I've been doing work in Haiti as well. Like I had a summer program that I ran for many years after the earthquake in the north of Haiti. And one of the things with that program was really to get a sense of how young people define themselves and what teachers and administrators in the school need to understand about youth development and how to support them. And we really grounded it in identity work. So we had art therapists we had this come to help the young people reconstruct their future and their realities. In the past, I have been doing a lot of work in Jacmel, Haiti, and we had a summer camp we just started 2 years ago, and it was amazing. It was a group of kids coming together. We had a range in age from 6 to 16, and we had some students who actually helped run the camp, who were the older students. And part of it was a social and spiritual literacy camp, really to get students to kind of understand an academic identity and how to have an academic identity and a spiritual identity and how it complements each other. And so we had students in the camp that were from the Protestant tradition, Catholic tradition, and we had a large percent that were from the Vodou tradition or mixtures of all of them. So it was important to really begin to demystify the stigmas around religion with the young people, since everybody lives in the same community. And then oftentimes they interact with the different religious practices as well. So the summer coming up, we're going to have a summer program as well. This usually happens in July, and it's a summer camp, and we're going to divide it by age group. And so this is a part where we're going to call it a Lakou enfants. So, having a Lakou for young people, and what does that look like? What does it mean when they're actively engaged and in charge of creating the curriculum, taking part in how to identify their needs and really have them visualize what they want for their country and themselves. So we're going to be in the midst of doing fundraisers around that and conversations around that. I do have a nonprofit called the Empowerment Network Global. So it's 10global.org, TENGLOBAL.org. So that's a site to learn more about the work that I'm doing, and to even support efforts that's going in the camp to actually have a space, and to also have stipends for the older students that's going to be helping in the project.
You know, this is amazing work that you're doing, because I spent a few years in Haiti in the schools, and the approach of education is very memorization. It's very strenuous, and there is a movement of the diaspora, or a focus of increasing education in Haiti for a long time, where the number was 7% of people are educated. So, like, I come from a family of educators, and my family is Haitian, and it's a continuing conversation. How do we increase that, and how do we increase the importance of critical thinking, and how healing the kind of work that you're doing on self-identity? Who am I in this world, and what's my story? And you're using the arts, and that is so empowering. I really, really celebrate that, and I can't wait to see it, because I will be down there to see it. And you said it was in Saint Raphael. You had a program
Well,
there.
my first program that I did for over 7 years was in a little town called Saint Raphael. And very quickly, I was a doctoral student at Harvard, and I knew I wanted to do my research on Haitian children. And this was a time that the children were coming to the US, having had an embargo in Haiti. And so one of the things was that, there wasn't a lot from the young people's perspective of what was happening. And no one asked the kids what was happening. So I spent 2 summers going to Haiti interviewing young people. And they were telling me, and these are people who were like 18, 19, 20, they were in their last years of high school. And they began in this little town called Saint Raphael, which I had like a family connection, but like it was one of the best school districts in this little rural town. And I wanted to know what was happening. And the young people, they talked to their education as a political act, and they talked about them being the future of the country, and then so I was just amazed. And then I asked them, after this, what is it that you want from me? And they're like, well, you're going to get a degree from a big school. We want a center. We're isolated here, and we want a center. And it took several years. Exactly what I did. I created a youth center in this town for the time frame that we were doing this work. So it was like we was doing work for almost 10 years, in this community with individual students. And a lot of things came up that, girls, especially in high school, were not seen. And and they didn't have models. So we started a young girls caucus. They wanted us to speak to their teachers and principals. So we had workshops with teachers and principals. So that's how it began. And then we decided to start inviting artists to have them express themselves. And artists who usually have no money, they would donate their time and come and do week workshops. So that's how that work began. And then I started doing more work in South Florida. And I had a summer program with one of my colleagues, Dr. Hall, and we did a 7-year program for Haitian American kids in South Florida. And now, as I get more deeper into my spiritual roots and that sort of thing, I'm back in Haiti using my school psychology background to do social emotional development and spiritual sustainability. And what does that mean to have that consciousness, and going deeper with the young kids around that. I mean, in Haiti, the majority of the populace is under 35 years old.
Yes.
So that's the kind of, that was the evolution of the work.
And they're coming out, the young people are coming out from a time of during last summer and last fall where they were all locked down. The country was in uproar. And so there's a lot, I remember connecting with some family members, and the kids are just, bouncing off the walls, and there's an effect on them psychologically. And so it will be really interesting to see with after COVID, what growth or what is happening right now with the youth, and to hear their stories and their perspective, like, because what we were saying before, they have a lot to give society, they have a lot to teach us, and they have a voice, and they need to be heard, especially in a country like Haiti. Like, what did you say? The population, most people are under 35, and so the future is in the youth, literally there. So that is beautiful work, and much needed, definitely revolutionary, right? Thinking about the future and how these young people are going to walk in the world. And so, you and I met through this sister circle where we come together and support each other's dreams and goals, but monetarily too. We monetarily gift each other and fund each other's projects. So, that has been such a great experience, coming together, supporting in a healing environment, a healing virtual space. So we've started a conversation about healing as a revolutionary act, and self-care as a revolutionary act. And there's so many aspects to that. We as a people, we are dealing with PTSD, and so we have to heal physically, mentally, emotionally, and then economically, and then there's so many layers to that. And your work really touches every aspect of that. And I really also love about the chakra work that you do too. So I know I'm going a little too much, but if you can talk a little bit about or a lot about how that's empowering, how that is a revolutionary act to take care of yourself, and the things that you need to do as wellness as a community.
Yeah, I mean, from my spiritual paradigm, we've been gifted this body by Creator. Whatever your paradigm is, we've been gifted a body that's encased in a soul, that's encased in this connector to the Creator. So for me, it's how do we take care of the vessel? And I think there's a lot of stressors. Right now in the world, there's a lot of stressors. In the US, there's a lot of stressors that interfere. And, some of us, our ancestry to this country, or as people that were already here, we have ancestral trauma. We have historical trauma that the body remembers. Not only does it remember from the individual, it remembers generationally.
Yeah.
And so when we have these added agitations and the stressors of sexism, race, all of these different isms that can exist that hinders your identity, then you get stalled, and the body becomes the storage of that maladaptive thinking, behavior, understanding. So, we have so many in different groups. Like, you have women that have different issues, that like fibroids and this and that. You have all these different asthma. You have these different manifestations of trauma, historical trauma in the body, and it's passed on generationally. Like, it's like in my family, my grandmother never had fibroids in this, but all of her daughters have fibroids. All of her granddaughters have this, so I think we need to pay attention. We have to pay attention in terms of how the body is constructed, in terms of with the mind, the body, and the spirit. Like, if it's out of alignment, we're going to have issues. And particularly as I think of Black women, being in this society and all of the differences that we face, like we're oftentimes the mother that carries so many burdens and that sort of thing. Or, it's just that it has to be acknowledged that even by our gender, our sexuality, how we move, our professions, there's different things that makes us out of alignment, and that takes away from our wellness. And we have to consciously be aware that we were gifted a body.
Gifted a body that's been under attack.
Yes.
And like the thing that I've been really connecting with and is the relationship with sugar, and I'll just talk about that. There's so many levels, but I'll just talk about sugar, and being a young person on the run, being a young person, not thinking about nutrition and just going to everywhere you go, you're bombarded with junk and sugar and, you know, and it's an attack. And when you really stop and think, what, there's not one bottle of water. Okay, later you start seeing more water. Well, where's the fruit? Can I get a fruit stand somewhere? Because I feel like, you know, the cigarettes, the alcohol, the sugar, it's been an attack on the body to have us completely dependent and move away from who we are, right? And so when you're taking care of yourself, when you are trying to deal with getting rid of the sugar and smoking less or not at all, or, you know, drinking less or not at all, it's really like not just a luxury, you know, like I think we've been taught self-care as a luxury, but no, as a revolutionary life.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it should be your birthright, you know, to have access to nutrition and other things. And then, so not only is it an attack, it's a structural, institutional deprivation as well. You know, there are some studies that show, like particularly, you know, in Haiti and other countries, but there's been some documentations like where you live is the best place to eat from. So, you know, so back in like in Haiti and other regional places in the South and, you know, all the different parts, like people had their own plot of land where they grew their own food and all of that stuff. And that was the most nutritious food for them. So like, you know, in Haiti, historically, you know, we had our own types of rice. We had our own, you know, types of meats that were cultivated in that region where you're buying it and that sort of thing. And these things, outside forces have come in and put an attack on the nutrients that we had in our regional spaces. So then you have the production of corporation where they're putting inferior products. Like, I mean, sugarcane, if we're eating raw sugarcane, you know, that's different from synthetic white, whatever that is, that's being put, you know, all this glucose and all things you can't even, you read the ingredients, you don't know what it is. That is purposeful. You know, those things are like, you know, purposeful. And yeah, so I mean, it's hard to deal with some decisions that are being made. Like, we know this for fact that, you know, in some communities, you know, we call them food deserts, right? In some communities where there are not even like ingredients of wellness. So then you have to think about it, like, how does this happen? You know, how does this happen? And so, you know, we're at a point where we have to look internally within the community how to address these things. So absolutely, you know, I don't know why, I don't understand, like, you know, we have context that doesn't encourage wellness through the food, through, you know, how we have to work to sustain an income, you know, being deprived of social structures that are not for our benefit. So like, we are constantly, you know, the barrage of what happens, you know, in the news or social media, or like, you know, so it's just the decisions that are being made on us. So now, when do we have the autonomy to create decisions for us?
And you know, there's different ways of rebellion, you know, hitting the streets, yes, but also what we're putting in our bodies, what we're putting in our minds, what we're allowing our brains to absorb is also a form of rebellion. And that's an important thing. A community should not be a food desert. Why? And why don't we have our own grocery stores, you know, our own, you know, source of nutrition? And so reclaiming that is a form of rebellion. So I really like our conversations. I really like our conversations too about abundance and recognizing the abundance around us and tapping into that. You know, like, some people have land, and this has been something in our community for a long time, where grandma or great grandma has land in Haiti or here, you know, and what happens to that land? It's not cared for, or something happens to it, or we sell it, or we sell it. And that's also a form, in my opinion, a form of rebellion, to cultivate the land and plant. And if you can feed yourself, who do you have to answer to? You know? So I really appreciate our conversations. I really appreciate the work that you do, because it really is looking at it in a whole perspective. There's not one answer to this.
Yeah. 'Cause I feel like we always have to remember we have choice. And sometimes it's a process, you know, sometimes it's a process of how we get to that. And nothing in excess, you know, like we can, and it trains the mind. Like sometimes I have to have that ice cream. I have to have that rum raisin ice cream. But it might have to be, you know, once a month. And it depends on developmentally where you are. You know, a young person might need more sorts of nutrition. And as you age, you might need, and then you have to know, I mean, you know, another thing that I think, you know, I worked in the school system for many years and had committed my life to the field of education. But sometimes we don't study our strengths and our weaknesses. You know, like somebody might be fine with eating this kind of thing, and then somebody is not. So it's like we don't have like a nutrition class, you know, we don't have, and then the busyness of life right now, particularly in the US, you know, people got to hustle and be quick, you know, so it's kind of like, it's also a re-education of like what nutrition is and why is it necessary. Like we had health classes that some young people don't have anymore, home economics, I mean, some schools are not even having gym. So it's like, you know, the balance of like, and, you know, I think for many people like me, like us who are really productive and all of that, it's easy to forget the body. So, well, okay, I got to get my mind right. You know, I got to do my spiritual practice, but how about your body? How are you honoring your temple? How are you honoring the body? And as you said, you can make choices. But, you know, we can't be excessive in either direction.
That's
But
right.
we have, but you have to be able to, we got to drink water. I mean, our community, we got to drink water. We got to exercise. I mean, and we have to teach our young people. Yeah, it's just, we got to know, like, you know, I don't know. We got to know nutrition.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I didn't know until I was taught, you know, and one of my first teachers was in my mid 30s, Dr. Laila Africa. I don't know if you've heard of him. He was just radical, you know, and he really taught nutrition as a rebellious act. And I never looked at it that way. You know, I never looked at it that way. Important, right? Black wellness is important, you know.
Yeah.
I think we put that on the back burner. I think we take care of everything else. But then, so if the vehicle, it's just common sense, if the vehicle is not working to its optimum or not working, then the work can't continue, or whatever it is that you want to accomplish can't continue. Another thing I want to talk about, sis, and that's another thing about community, is the importance of having a sister circle for us women, for sisters to have a circle. Because honestly, you know, I'm 40 some odd years old. You know, I have habits. These habits are ingrained, and I go automatically to, when was the last time I had a sip of water? You know, or I go into the thing where when was the last time I exercised or I did something for myself? But when I'm having a conversation with my sister, or I'm, you know, we're having these regular meetings and regular groups, and this is what I'm doing, that inspires me too, to take care of reminds me in a way too. Oh yeah, I said I want to do that. That was my goal. So can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, you know, as you said, we met in a sister circle, you know, in a wellness circle. And I think it's really important because sometimes we forget that we're not here isolated, we're connected. You know, everybody's connected. And like, and our healing and our wellness comes from our reflection, you know, so I think that is essential because, you know, I feel like, you know, again, it's not for everybody, but I think generationally, you know, some of us have lost that connection of teaching, one teach one, you know, because for me, you know, when I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, and I moved to Florida, and I knew that, you know, after graduating from my doc program, I just drove down here. And I said, and I remember consciously speaking in prayer and said, you know, I want some strong women to be around me, to be able to do this work that I've embarked on. And like part of it, it was because for me, I mean, it's very biased, but I think Black women are the source. You know, like we brought, I mean, the oldest vessel on earth that was documented was an African woman. So, and when we see that extreme consciousness, which is contrary to powers that be right now, the absolutely opposite of the patriarchy that exists is a Black woman. So like, so the pressures, but yes, yet many of us, and I'm not saying only Black, I mean, we have a lot of sacred mothers from every tradition, but the sacred mother, whether you have children or not, you become a symbol and everybody wants to suckle off of you.
Yeah.
So this is when for me, how you get replenished is from other powerful or thriving or people who are trying to ascend that resembles your reality. So I think, you know, as women, we are a very significant source to each other. We're reflection, we're affirmation. And we also are wounded, you know, we also are wounded. And many times it's another reflection of you that's also wounded that can help you heal. So, you know, and it's accountability, you know, what we're involved with. And, you know, we have sisters we've never even physically met before, right? But there's an accountability. There's just a witnessing with love and care. So, you know, and you know, I think about my grandmother, my mother, my aunts, and my girl sisters, you know, my friend sisters, you know, my sacred sisters, like each of them in it, their uniqueness have loved me and honored me in a way that have made me strong enough to do what I do, you know, and it's not one of them, it was the chain of them that steadfast. And even the ones who were critical, even the ones that I had to love, forgive, and love again and forgive again, they also came and taught me that. So sometimes we have to go to the source of what we know, and the source of what we know is what looks like us in the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been incredibly healing just to witness sometimes, you know. It's like you don't have to do anything but just to hold it, just to hold the space and just to witness and just to tell a sister, I hear you. And to hear that, oh, I'm not the only one dealing with this too now, you know, I'm not the only one dealing with this, and why? You know, and how do we move forward? L'union fait la force, you know, that stays with me all the time. I learned that as a child when I was going to school in Haiti. You know, when we come together, we have strength. And so everything that's opposing that separates us. You know, at the workplace, you know, sometimes where is my sister? I need to, you know, what you do here, sister? How can we work together to where we've been taught that if you see a sister in the workplace, that's your, you know, that's your competition. So I really, you know, implore us sisters when we're talking about wellness to find a sister group somewhere, even if it's virtually right now, even if it's online, and you know, you connect. Even sometimes WhatsApp chat, it's a great little tool. You know, you inspire each other, you remind each other, drink your water, you know, you get on programs together, you make a buddy system to move together. It really, really is supportive and been helpful for me. And then I'm in a group too that's going to be like, hey sis, here's some money toward your dream. That has been amazing. So, you know,
Yeah.
I implore y'all to do that.
Yeah, you know, because it's interesting because like when I joined this group, I was surprised because there was other people that I recognized. But if you can imagine having a collective consciousness where you're supporting somebody's dream financially, and also holding space with all of the women, as you said, I thought that was really powerful. I mean, there's brothers there too, but the majority, it was set up for women. But like, so, you know, like, again, I think that's revolutionary.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think it's revolutionary when we create our own economic systems, you know, that is beneficial for for the community. And it's just, I gift you. I gift you to go pursue your own wellness.
Yeah. And not just with money too. And by the way, do you know this person? Let me introduce you to this person. And by the way, let me buy your product. And by the, it's a great networking support too. And since I want to definitely talk to you, Dr. Charlene, about, because I really believe that a priestess, a Manbo, is ancestral work. That's my perception of it and my understanding.
Sure, sure. It's interesting because I was raised in a Catholic family, and my grandmother was an orphan. But the irony is, she always revered ancestors, right? So I wasn't raised in a formal family that identified with Vodou. And it wasn't until I was accepted to Harvard, right? And like I was the youngest in my class for my doctoral program. And I started going through the libraries because I knew I wanted to do something on Haitians, on Haitian kids and their well-being. And I kept on coming up with document after document talking about Haitian Vodou. And I'm like, these people have been studying us. And it was like I found over 500 books, pamphlet documents, you know, um, and I'm like, well, what is this that is of me that they have studied and others have studied? And the more I began to study and understand, it was a Pan-African consciousness. I wasn't raised in Haiti, I was raised in the US. And so I can't, even though I do a significant amount of work in Haiti, I don't know the everyday reality, and so, my grandmother was an orphan. I don't even know her family, community and that sort of thing. So I became very intrigued as a school psychologist and an educator. What is the psychological and academic identity within this belief? And it became beyond religion. It was kind of like a connection to a Pan-African source that we are, that's so powerful. It became an understanding of how we have theories, we have principles, we have concepts, we have, like the African Americans have their spirituals, we have Haitian Vodou spirituals that were became your teacher and teachings. There's practices. So, I'm less religious and more spiritual. And I did not go through a formal initiation until 18 years. I studied for 18 years and began to understand, like, what were these conceptualization, and had the consciousness of spirit would speak to me, would guide me. And so, most definitely for me, it's not a religion per se, it's my ancestral right. This is my privilege. This is my liberation. And for me to intellectually and spiritually understand the legacy that was passed down specifically through my cultural roots to understand how to exist has been phenomenal. And I write about it. And it's always been for me, like, I did all of these programs. I didn't initiate until after, I did all these programs, but there's a connection not only with the African, but there's a connection with all cultural people that have the right to honor their ancestral roots. So why don't we, as Pan-Africans, as those of African diasporic descendants, we can explore that and see how it speaks to us. Because I cannot deny my great-great-great-grandmother and call her wicked. Because I didn't understand the historical understanding of why I was chosen, and Goddess made me born in a Christian Haitian family to understand the root that I'm a Pan-Africanist.
That's beautiful. Yep. I completely feel what you're saying. I was raised in a Catholic household too. And, when I grew up and, 18, 19, 20, I really want to figure out who I am as this Haitian woman. I saw myself as a Haitian woman. Come to realize I'm a Haitian American woman, because I have, my reality is not, in everyday life in Haiti. It is different than here. But, it's like I turned to Vodou to learn about my ancestors and learn my songs. You know, it's like, what are my songs? What are the songs that my grandmother sang? Well, and that really became so important to me. And it was like, oh, what Serpent in the Rainbow was what Hollywood does, because that's what I knew about Vodou. You know, being a Haitian American of a Christian is what they put on Hollywood. You know, the as we know what they do in Hollywood, right? So getting to know the songs is like about unity, coming together, praising ancestors, praising the land, giving thanks, coming together. It was like, oh, there's the attack again. So we're being attacked spiritually and being given this image, you know, when we have our own. So the reconnection to what your own is, you know, I'm not knocking anything. I'm not knocking anybody's religion, but I really it came important to me that spirituality is important. What is my spirituality? What is my relationship to divine? And that is an important question to ask when we're talking about our wellness, when we're talking about healing, you know.
Right. And like, I think just to be very specific, because I know your viewers are diverse, but just, you know, looking at, for me as someone born in the Haitian tradition, you know, I was a therapist for Haitian kids for about 6 years, 7 years. I was a therapist for Haitian kids, you know, in the district where I worked. It was a bilingual program, and I worked in a facility that was a mental health facility for children. And like, and I was very young, you know, my Creole was like Lou, broken up. And none of the teachers would help me do the translation, but it didn't matter if the parents were Catholic, Protestant, or had little trails of Vodouism, whatever that was at the time. I wasn't fully aware.
Yeah.
They all, something spiritually was wrong with their kid if they had a mental illness. So in order for me to be an effective therapist, I had to understand. So I started visiting, you know, Protestant churches. I grew up Catholic. I started visiting this whole concept of these Vodou spaces to be the most effective therapist, you know, and bottom line, you know, then I was being asked to do lectures to Adventists that had an influx of Haitian children to help them understand, because these Adventist Haitian children were coming up with a different religious cultural lens. So we are Haitian Baptist, we're Haitian Protestant, we're Haitian Pentecostal, we're Haitian Catholic.
Right.
So because every religion, and this is something that the Vatican people have always taught, like, of course, your cultural aspect, like, you know, we have Orthodox Christians, you know, like, so, you know, we bring in our cultural space, and it's all equally relevant and sacred.
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
Because I'm like such an advocate for young people, for children. And so, you know, I would always want to emphasize that, you know, all of our children are ours. And then, and you know, as you talk about a revolutionary act, I think we should embrace all of our children.
Yes.
You know, as a community, reclaim our children, you know, regardless of whatever issues that they may have or whatever their struggles may have, if they're gifted, if they're learning disabled, if they're trying to understand their sexuality, if they are, you know, whatever they are, you know, I want us to reclaim our children as a community, you know, and I talk about this, you know, when I was 9 years old, my 15-year-old brother was killed by the police. So then when my son turned 15, it was like a very interesting reality. You know, this is when I became, you know, there's parts of me that's very African American, there's parts of me that's very Caribbean American, there's parts of me that's very Haitian American, you know, and I'm considered probably a Black educated elite. I went to Harvard, but at this point, you know, we have to claim all of our children, different socioeconomic groups. You know, we tend to get educated and leave our communities, but how do we reconnect with our communities to begin to be a big brother, be a big sister, be a model? So that's another, for me, an act of revolutionary act, is to really, you know, like, you know, my organization 10 Global, we're doing that. You know, if you're part of a, you know, church community, religious community, or you grew up in a neighborhood, you know, we need to consciously connect with our young people and reclaim them.
Yes, and you know, 10 Global is doing some amazing work. Please connect, please support. Check out the website. I'll have all the information in the description box below. Appreciate you. You know, become one of my clients, and you've been using one of our Digest essential oils, which has been great for me. You know, I talk about the benefits for me, but if you could share how it's helped you using the Digest oil.
Yeah, you know, I think another thing about having, you know, a sister circle is also being able to trust. You know, this is a conscious act of how do we re-identify, re-understand, re-teach ourselves how to trust. Not only to trust what people say, but to trust people's thoughts and actions. So if my sister Shirley is like, listen, you know, I have these products that I've been working with that I think are very helpful, I'm gonna trust my sister and I believe her. So, you know, most definitely, you know, and I believe in like these things, you acupuncture, chiropractor, you know, having spiritual massage therapy. And then like, you know, as it's in our blood as Pan-Africans and Haitians that we use oils, we use essential oils, we use, you know, leaves to supplement with the consciousness of love and energy and God consciousness in what we do. So, you know, just one of your products, it's like, you know, in terms of like, you know, not feeling well, because, you know, I'm 40 something too. Look good for 40 something, getting up there. So like, you know, the body will naturally age, and we have to be very diligent to know how do we sustain this vessel. And like, so, you know, getting like stomach pains or just not feeling well, digestion is not going okay. And I'm just like, okay, I'm not feeling well. So, you know, having taken this particular product, and I had a meeting, you know, I always have this Zoom crazy world. So I'm having a meeting in 30 minutes and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not feeling well. How am I gonna do this? I was like, yo, yes, my girl. Yes, okay, I got this. And then so just taking it like literally within like 5 to 10 minutes, back to normal, back to basic, you know, and again, I had some interaction with some essential oils, putting them in cleaning products. You know, how do we do work? Like, how do we cleanse our home? Like, you know, to make that sacred. Like, how do we cleanse our home? How do we bring in fragrances? How do we bring in the energy of healing? You know, back in Haiti, they had their ways of cleaning home, but like, you know, here in this ground space, you know, of course, I'm gonna trust my sister who's gonna say, listen, you know, here is a way to cleanse your home, you know, and I'm just like, absolutely. And it brings peace and light. So again, we gotta trust each other, connect with each other, and let each other be part of our sacred wellness.
Thank you, sis. Thank you so much. You know, connecting with Ancestral, that's been such an important thing for me, because I think about how you know, how did they used to clean? They used herbs.
Yeah.
They use plants and herbs. You know how the citron. My mom used to use citron to clean everything in the kitchen. You know,
Yeah.
and that's lemon. You know, the power of what we have in nature, and we are part of that too. So connecting to
Absolutely.
our resources. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I mean, we got to go back to basic. I mean, you know, we have been bombarded. I've been overeducated, right? So, like, you know, but then, you know, the more you learn through a system that's not yours, the more you know what you don't know. And so I had to go back through my ancestral roots to get that education, which was as or more important than my formal education. I had to get my ancestral education.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it was an affirmation to what I knew in my cells. You
Because where does the ancestors go? They go back right through us. You know, my grandmother is in my consciousness. My grandfather's in my consciousness. My great grandmother is in my consciousness.
know, and you know, and it's so easy to give up, man. It's so easy to give up. I'm telling you, but the reason why I don't give up, the reason why we don't give up is I think about them. You know, I think about they didn't give up. You know, what did they give up? Their lives, right? For me to be here. So I have to do the next thing for the next generation. And I feel them cheering us on. You know, I feel them really like pushing us forward. And to me, the message is come together, come together, come together. So sis, it has been an honor to have a conversation with you. You know, you are one of like, you have taught me so much in the year that I have known you. I really love you, and I look forward to the work that we do together.
Yes, I mean, you know, I honor you, sister. I mean, you are a profound beacon. I think, you know, that untouched crystal diamond in our community, and for all communities to know the magnitude of what it takes to be well. We mirror strength. You know, we have to love our communities so much, our collective whole community so much, that we will model wellness for them and give them an opportunity to step into that reality. So you are doing ancestral work, you're doing God Goddess work. Our ancestors are so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. I love you too, sister. And, you know, we got to create, we got to recreate and create what is meaningful and necessary for our community.
Yes, yes, I. So, you know, thank you, sis. Dr. Desir, please tell us a little bit more about your global network think tank.
Okay. So one of the things that happened during the COVID-19, you know, during COVID, it was something that, you know, I was thinking about, you know, how do we think about mental wellness in our community, particularly since we had a lot of people passing away. You know, we had a substantial amount of minorities passing away, and many of our Black and brown families, they have rituals. They have a lot of, you know, rituals when someone crosses in terms of what to do. So being faced with that, and I really reached out to a group of therapists that I know, clinicians in the field, for us to begin to think together about what does it mean to have mental wellness on a Pan-African lens. You know, so I spoke with a group of Haitian Americans, psychiatrists, people, counselors, clinical psychologists, counseling psychologists, interdisciplinary, interfaith, non-faith, you know, a group of people to really begin to think together around this. So we spent the months coming up with ideas of what does mental health looks like? How are we going to support the extent of our Black and brown families who are experiencing loss and can't even have the ritual going home ceremonies that they tend to have. And we also started working with the Association of Black Psychologists in South Florida. And we began to seek counsel and directions from Dr. Wade Nobles, who was one of the first founders of the Black Psychology Association, you know, to really be strategic. We had several conversations, public conversations on this, the importance of how to have Pan-African love and allies to support this work. And we even have 3 publications coming out where we were approached to write about how is the COVID-19 affecting our community and disadvantaged populations. And we're coming up with our own terms. You know, we came up with a term called souffrance haïtienne, you know, Haitian suffering, and the resilience that comes from aspects of this, and how do we begin to have breaking cycles, and how do we begin to have positive and cultural relevant ways of providing mental health healing. So the Haitian Mental Health Think Tank, you know, we're an organization amongst ourselves, and stay tuned. There's a lot happening. We're actually, October 10th, there's the Haitian Studies Association conference is happening. This year it has to be online, and we're gonna be presenting at 7 o'clock during the conference on the whole conceptualization of souffrance haïtienne, you know, a psychological concept that is specific to Pan-African and Haitian communities. So that's another thing, you know, that it's important that not only are we doing physical body wellness, but we're also doing mental health wellness.
Yes, yes. the whole healing, the whole being is really amazing. Juneteenth this year, your group
Yes.
did a virtual Zoom, like a healing circle.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so
Yes.
I came on there because, I love to hear you speak. You really are motivating and very healing. So I'm like, I got to be there. She's going to be there. I got to be in the room. So I showed up, but I did not realize how much healing I was going to receive.
Right.
And I think the first question really kind of hit me. The first question was, when did you realize that you were Black? I didn't I've never asked myself that question. And it's like, these conversations are important to have. There's a group healing, that community healing that we need to go through. And so thank you for providing those spaces, and thank you for the work that you're doing. It was so beneficial for me. So I look forward to the other.
Yes. So, and it's expanded, it's a beautiful thing to have a Pan-African lens, inviting people from different communities and having allies of different races, but also having a respectful space where we can do our own healing work. And we're using ancestral practices to do these communal healing work. It's a beautiful thing where the time is now. It's 2020. We have to be, open to not get distracted by the political noise, not get distracted by, certain things, but empower ourselves, as you said, and be the revolution that you seek.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Désir. What a wonderful time. What a wonderful conversation. I look forward to bringing you on again to talk more about your projects, and hopefully we can continue to work together.
No, absolutely. What you mean? Hopefully. Absolutely.
I'm like, I want to go to Haiti and teach dance, and I want to teach massage, and I want to teach meditation, and I want to teach. I'm so excited about that.
Yes, we still have to exchange some body healing practices.
Oh, yes, that's true. We didn't even talk about some of the chakra healing work you do. That's a whole other thing, but maybe we'll do another video.
No problem. This was fun, good,
If you're interested in learning more about any of the projects that Dr. Charlene Désir talked about with the Global Network Think Tank, or if you're interested to learn more about the Empower Network organization, comment below and we'll get back to you. If you'd like to have Dr. Charlene Désir come back and talk more about chakra healing, comment below chakra healing. Please remember to like, share, subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. We release videos regularly about essential oils, wellness, and healthy living. Again, thank you for watching. See you on the next video. Bye.